A single F-35C Lightning II screams down the electromagnetic catapult of the USS Gerald R. Ford, accelerating from 0 to 160 miles per hour in less than 2 seconds. As the jet leaves the deck, it burns 10 gallons of specialized JP-5 aviation fuel instantly. The pilot's helmet alone, a custom-fitted piece of augmented reality technology, costs $400,000, which is the price of a single-family home in the American Midwest. The missile tucked inside the weapon bay costs $2 million, and the ship that launched it cost the American taxpayer $13.3 billion to build, not counting the $5 billion spent on research and development. Every time the clock ticks on this warship, a fortune in taxpayer money evaporates into the salt air. This is not just a weapon of war. It is a floating economy that burns cash faster than a blast furnace. Operating this vessel costs an estimated $7 million per day when deployed. That is nearly $300,000 per hour, or $5,000 every single minute. In this documentary, we are going to audit the books of the world's most expensive warship. We will move beyond the sticker price to expose the hidden operating costs that make the Ford the most expensive asset in the U.S. military inventory. We will break down the nuclear fuel bill that is paid decades in advance, the astronomical cost of the air wing that exceeds the value of the ship itself, and the payroll of a crew that rivals the budget of a mid-sized corporation. We will investigate the cost of a single meal, the price of flushing the toilets with acid, and the terrifying expense of simply keeping the rust away. We will also analyze the cost-exchange ratio of modern warfare, where million-dollar missiles are used to intercept cheap drones, and ask if this economic model is sustainable. This is the receipt for American air superiority. The sticker price of the USS Gerald R. Ford is the headline that grabs attention, but it is only the down payment. The $13.3 billion paid to Huntington Ingalls Industries covered the steel, the electronics, and the construction labor. To put that number in perspective, for the cost of this one ship, you could have built the Burj Khalifa in Dubai 8 times over. You could have bought the entire NFL franchises of the Dallas Cowboys, the New England Patriots, and the New York Giants combined. But the construction cost is just the shell. The true value and the true cost lies in what the ship carries. The air wing is the raison d'etre of the carrier, and it is a financial black hole. The Ford carries roughly 75 aircraft. A single squadron of F-35C Lightning IIs represents an investment of over $1 billion just for the airframes. The E-2D Hawkeye radar planes, the eyes of the fleet, cost $170 million each. When you add the EA-18G Growler electronic warfare jets and the MH-60 Seahawk helicopters, the value of the aircraft sitting on the flight deck often exceeds $5 billion. If a sudden storm washes a single jet overboard, it is a financial loss equivalent to sinking a luxury superyacht. Furthermore, these planes are expensive to fly. The cost per flight hour, CPFH, is a critical metric in military accounting. An F-35C costs roughly $42,000 for every hour it is in the air. This figure includes fuel, consumables, and the massive team of maintainers required to keep the stealth coating intact. If the air wing flies a standard 12-hour operational day with multiple sorties, the fuel and maintenance bill for the planes alone can hit $2 million before the sun sets. This does not include the cost of the pilots. Training a single naval aviator to the point where they are qualified to land on a moving deck costs the Navy roughly $10 million in flight time, simulator hours, and salary. The pilot sitting in the cockpit is a multi-million-dollar asset, often more valuable than the plane itself. Then there is the fuel for the ship. The Ford does not burn oil, it burns highly enriched uranium. It is powered by two A1B nuclear reactors. Unlike a gas tank that you fill up every week, these reactors are prepaid energy. The Navy buys the nuclear core up front, designed to last for 25 years without refueling. The cost of these cores is classified, but estimates place the nuclear fuel and the complex engineering required to install it at over $500 million. However, the true financial burden of nuclear power isn't the acquisition, it's the disposal. When the Ford reaches its midlife refueling complex overhaul (RCOH) in 25 years, the Navy will spend another $5 or $6 billion to cut the ship open, remove the radioactive waste, and install new cores. This is a mortgage payment that comes due once a generation, and it is massive. It involves leasing a dry dock for 4 years, hiring thousands of specialized workers, and managing hazardous waste that will remain dangerous for 10,000 years. The human cost is the most complex line item on the ledger. The Ford carries a crew of roughly 4,500 sailors when the air wing is embarked. This is a floating corporation. The payroll alone is staggering. A seaman recruit makes about $25,000 a year in base pay, but the captain and the senior officers earn 6 figures. When you factor in housing allowances, hazardous duty pay, family separation pay for being at sea, and the massive bonuses paid to retain nuclear-trained officers, which can reach $30,000 a year just for signing a contract, the monthly payroll for the ship exceeds $20 million. But the Navy also pays for their health care through the TRICARE system, their retirement pensions, and their continuous training. The human capital on the deck of the Ford is worth billions. If a sailor gets injured, the medical costs, disability payments, and replacement training add to the tally. Unlike a civilian corporation that can lay off workers to save money, the Navy must feed, house, and clothe its workforce regardless of the economic climate. Feeding this army is a logistical and financial operation that runs 24 hours a day. The daily food budget is roughly $65,000. That is nearly $2 million a month just for raw ingredients. But that doesn't account for the logistics of getting the food there. The supply ships that bring the food, the TO oilers, cost money to operate. The helicopters that lift the pallets cost money to fly. A single pallet of lettuce delivered to the Ford in the middle of the Persian Gulf might effectively cost $500 a head by the time you factor in the jet fuel used to deliver it. The prime vendor contracts that supply the Navy are massive, multi-billion-dollar agreements that lock in prices for years. But the sheer volume of consumption, 3 million eggs, thousands of pounds of coffee, makes the galley one of the highest burn rate departments on the ship. The waste from this food also costs money. The ship uses a plasma arc waste destruction system, PAWDS, to vaporize trash. Running a plasma torch at 3,000 degrees consumes massive amounts of electricity and requires expensive maintenance on the torch heads and ceramic liners. The ship effectively pays to buy the food, pays to cook the food, and pays to destroy the leftovers. Maintenance is the silent killer of the budget. A ship in saltwater is a ship that is slowly dissolving. Rust is relentless. The Navy spends millions of dollars annually just on paint and labor to chip and seal the hull. But on the Ford, the maintenance costs are higher due to the new technology. The Electromagnetic Aircraft Launch System (EMALS) and the Advanced Arresting Gear (AAG) are proprietary systems. You cannot just buy parts at a hardware store. When a linear motor breaks, it requires specialized parts from General Atomics and highly paid civilian contractors to fly out to the ship to fix it. These tech reps often live on the ship during deployment, earning high civilian salaries that are billed to the Navy. The toilets are a unique financial drain. The specialized acid flush required to unclog the vacuum sewage system costs $400,000 per treatment. If the ship needs this done twice a deployment, That is nearly $1 million literally flushed down the drain. This is the innovation tax, the cost of being the first ship to use unproven technology. Ordnance is another massive variable. The Ford's magazines hold millions of pounds of bombs and missiles. A single AIM-9X Sidewinder air-to-air missile costs roughly $400,000. A GBU-31 JDAM bomb is cheaper, at around $25,000, but a standard strike mission might drop 4 of them. During high-intensity combat operations, like the recent strikes in the Red Sea, the carrier strike group can expend tens of millions of dollars in munitions in a single week. The Phalanx CIWS close-in weapons system fires 20mm tungsten rounds that cost $30 each. When the gun fires at 4,500 rounds per minute, it burns through $4,000 of ammunition in 2 seconds of firing. This leads to the cost-exchange ratio problem. If the Ford fires a $2 million SM-2 missile to shoot down a $20,000 Houthi drone, the Navy is winning the tactical battle but losing the economic war. This financial asymmetry is one of the biggest threats to the modern carrier fleet. The ship carries a finite dollar amount of missiles, and restocking them at sea is difficult and dangerous. We must also consider the escort tax. The aircraft carrier never travels alone. It is the center of a carrier strike group, CSG, usually consisting of a guided missile cruiser, 2 or 3 destroyers, and a nuclear attack submarine. These ships exist solely to protect the carrier. To calculate the true daily cost of deploying the Ford, you have to include the operating costs of these escorts. A destroyer costs about $200,000 a day to operate. A submarine is similar. The entire strike group represents a daily burn rate of closer to $10 million. The Ford is not just a ship, it is the CEO of a fleet that consumes resources on a planetary scale. The destroyers burn marine diesel fuel which must be resupplied by tankers. This fuel bill runs into the millions per month. The strike group is a fuel-hungry beast that must be fed constantly to maintain its speed and presence. There is also the cost of port calls. When the Ford pulls into a foreign port like Oslo or Antalya, the meter keeps running. The Navy pays hefty docking fees, tugboat fees, and utility costs to the host nation. Security barriers must be erected. Force protection boats must be hired. A 4-day visit to a foreign port can cost the Navy hundreds of thousands of dollars in fees, not including the money the sailors spend in the local economy. Conversely, staying at sea is expensive because of the escorts burning fuel. There is no cheap option. Whether the ship is moving or stationary, the money flows. Diplomatic missions are expensive. Hosting foreign dignitaries on the ship involves catering costs, security costs, and the operational cost of launching jets to put on an air show for the guests. This is soft power, and it comes with a hard price tag. The research and development costs are often amortized over the life of the class, but they still sting. The Ford class faced massive cost overruns. The dual-band radar, the elevators, and the catapults all required billions in testing. The first ship in the class always pays the lead ship tax, absorbing the mistakes and learning curves. The Ford endured shock trials, where the Navy detonated 40,000-pound explosives in the water next to the ship to test its hull. Preparing for and repairing damage from these trials cost millions. The subsequent ships, the JFK and the Enterprise, should theoretically be cheaper, but inflation and supply chain issues keep the price tag high. The Navy argues that this investment is amortized over a 50-year service life, making the annual cost acceptable for the strategic value provided. A carrier provides sovereign U.S. territory anywhere in the world, something no land base can offer. The diplomatic value of parking a carrier off the coast of a rival nation is incalculable in dollar terms, but the bill must still be paid. Even the internet connection costs money. The ship relies on satellite bandwidth for communications, operational data, and the crew's Wi-Fi. Military-grade satellite bandwidth is incredibly expensive. Providing enough bandwidth for 5,000 people to send emails and for the ship to receive targeting data requires a contract with defense satellite providers that costs millions per year. The sailor phone lines and the internet cafes are a morale necessity, but they are a high-tech utility bill that never stops. The cybersecurity budget alone, keeping the ship's network safe from Chinese or Russian hackers, is a multi-million-dollar annual expense involving specialized software and personnel. We must also account for the cost of mid-deployment repairs. Things break. Often, parts must be flown out to the carrier via C2 Greyhound or V Osprey. This is the most expensive delivery service on Earth. Flying a $10 O-ring to a ship in the middle of the ocean might cost $10,000 in flight time. This logistical tale is enormous. The Navy maintains warehouses worldwide, filled with spare parts for the Ford class, representing billions in stranded inventory that sits on shelves waiting for a breakdown. Ultimately, the USS Gerald R. Ford is a case study in the economics of superpowers. Only a nation with an economy the size of the United States can afford to build, crew, and operate such a vessel. The daily operating cost of $7 million means that in the time it took you to watch this video, the ship spent roughly $50,000. Is it worth it? Proponents argue that the cost of not having a carrier, the loss of trade routes, the inability to deter aggression would be far higher. The global economy relies on free trade lanes protected largely by the U.S. Navy. A single war prevented by the presence of a carrier saves trillions in global GDP. Critics argue that the money could be better spent on smaller, more numerous ships or on social programs at home. But the reality is that the check has been signed. The Ford is here, and it is hungry. It demands a constant stream of dollars, uranium, and labor to maintain its status as the apex predator of the oceans. The financial life cycle of the ship ends with decommissioning, which is its own financial nightmare. In 50 years, when the Ford is retired, the Navy will spend roughly $1.5 billion to defuel the reactors and recycle the steel. The ship costs money from the moment the first blueprint is drawn until the final piece of scrap metal is melted down. It is a 70-year financial commitment that binds the taxpayer to the ship long after the current crew has retired. So the next time you see the Ford sailing majestically through the ocean, do not just see a warship. See a floating Federal Reserve Bank. See a burning pyre of currency. See the collective tax dollars of millions of working Americans focused into a single gray steel point. It is the most expensive object ever built by human hands for the purpose of war, and the meter is always running. If this audit of the world's most expensive warship cashed in on your curiosity, I need you to do 3 things right now. First, subscribe to the Tactical Chow channel. We don't just look at the machines, we look at the price tag attached to them. Second, smash that like button. It helps us justify our own operating costs to the algorithm. Third, leave a comment below. I want to know, if you were in charge of the Navy's budget, would you build one Ford-class carrier for $13 billion or 10 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers? Where is the better value? Let me know in the comments. And finally, if you think the cost of a surface ship is high, wait until you see the price of silence. Click the video on your screen right now to see the economics of a nuclear attack submarine. It is a different kind of expensive. Click it and I'll see you there.